Welcome to my presentation. My name is Danielle Manning. My presentation will explore the current research on ambiguous loss and the impact it has on individuals, families, and the wider community. It will argue that there is a need for further research and will lastly propose how I intend to address this. In Ireland, there is approximately 11,000 people hospitalised each year due to a brain injury. As pointed out by Kreutzer, many survivors experience a long-term disability due to cognitive impairments, personality changes, or emotional and communication difficulties. As a consequence, long-term support from services may be required. ABI Ireland is one of the leading neuro-rehabilitation services for people living with a brain injury. My role as a senior social worker involves providing a therapeutic service to both clients and families that enable them to live a more meaningful life. Much of my contact with clients has centered around their unresolved grief, which has led to mental health or addiction issues, slow recovery for the individual, or family dysfunction. So what is ambiguous loss? The theory of ambiguous loss was developed by Pauline Boss in the 1970s. It can be defined as a loss that occurs without closure and is surrounded by uncertainty. This type of loss lacks validation. In contrast, when a loved one passes, the grief is socially recognized and there are culturally accepted rituals. Put more simply, there is no body to bury and no culturally accepted ceremony to support the non-bereaved. Life goes on, but the grief remains frozen. Research has highlighted some of the key concepts. For the family, the situation is stressful and oftentimes cruel in its unending torment. Because the loss is intangible or uncertain, the mourning process for family members becomes complicated. They may find it difficult to understand what has happened or why. This can lead to unresolved grief, which subsequently can create multifaceted challenges within the dynamics of the family. Boss identified two types of ambiguous loss. For the purpose of this study, we will concentrate on type 2, psychologically absent but physically present. It was noted by Kreutzer that where a brain injury was present, the loss was ambiguous. In Mark Holloway's study of the family experiences, one participant said that the grieving is an ongoing process. Anniversaries, birthdays, and other special occasions are particularly difficult times to cope, as it just highlights the fact that John is missing. Physically, he is still here, but mentally, he is not. So what does current research say? Ambiguous loss in relation to ABI has been identified to vary over time and to be individual. Loss can be ongoing and sometimes multiple losses are connected. Research has also highlighted that there is a need for more targeted interventions to support the grieving process and those affected by an ABI. In a social work context, ambiguous loss has been noted to affect the whole family. In 1991, this was recognised by Brooke, who adopted the term head injured family. The difficulty is that in practice, families and individuals are often criticised for not finding closure and left on their own to cope, isolated and trapped between hope and despair, with lingering grief that is often unfairly diagnosed. On a micro level, this leaves the individual feeling hopeless and despair, often leading to chronic sorrow, anxiety, or depression. More often than not, there is reduced social contact or an inability to adjust to changes. The individual loses hope about their future, including their dreams, aspirations, and identity. On a macro level, families are often left feeling angry and confused. They become fearful of the future and often are preoccupied with the lost person. They tend to isolate themselves, make poor decisions, and to have caregiver ambivalence. On a meso level, there's little or no community support offered to the family. The loss is often treated like death, or there is a denial of the situation. Current research has shown that there is a vital need for further investigation. Due to the complexity of the loss, it can be overlooked and families may not be supported effectively. There also appears to be limited practical resources available to professionals. So what do I intend to do about it? I propose a PhD project that explores ambiguous loss of brain injury survivors and their families. As the narrator, I will provide a platform for participants to capture their lived experiences. The core objectives will include understanding their experiences, exploring the changes in family structures, and identifying how families can be supported. Lastly, it will develop a handbook that can be used by professionals. The methodology that will be used is a narrative inquiry. As pointed out by Dr. Dan McAdams, if you want to know me, you must first know my story. This methodology will provide a more in-depth understanding of the participant's point of view. It is intended that the target population for the research will be both family members and brain injury survivors that are at least 2 years post-injury. All participants will be over the age of 18. It is intended that this research project will inform neurorehabilitation services and provide evidence-based practice that will improve the lives of brain injury survivors and their families. Lastly, it will deliver a working model for professionals. In conclusion, I'd like to end with this poem by Kate Time. Let's have a funeral celebrating who you used to be. Let's write an eulogy about all you meant to me. Let's light a funeral pyre and set fire to the past. Let's be open to our grief and how long it's going to last. Let's invite the neighbours in for a nice cup of tea. Let's talk about how great you were and set the old you free. Let's bury our old relationship, ash to ash, dust to dust, in the graveyard of our old life of love and hope and trust. Let's call in the professionals to wail and moan and keen. Let's recollect adventures and places that we've been. Let's quietly reflect on what you meant to us all. Let's think about who you were before the reaper came to call. Let's lay you out in state, dignified in repose. Let's weep into our hankies as the velvet curtains close. Let's acknowledge your passing, the you we knew has left. Let's accept that every day will be sad and bereft. Let's take the remnants of your brain and put them in an urn. Acknowledge all the absent cells that have no way to return. Let's hold each other close and identify our sorrow. Let's let you go and hold you near for each new tomorrow. Let's make a wreath of forget-me-nots and lay them around your head, as part of you is buried, but you are very far from dead. Thank you.